If you haven't been following Candace Owens' recent stuff, it's getting crazy out there. She just put out a post the last couple days claiming that there is a credible assassination plot out on her life. And now a lot of people said, oh, this is just Candace being Candace. She's being bombastic. This person claims that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Foreign Legion's 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement.
This would imply that the person obviously knows who Charlie Kirk's assassin is. Hypothetically, if this were true, she's cracked the case of who actually killed Charlie Kirk. All right, this is the post from Candace Owens. Urgent. 2 days ago, I was contacted by a high-ranking employee of the French government. After determining this person's position and proximity to the French couple, I have deemed the information they gave me to be credible enough to share publicly in the event that something happens. In short, this person claims that the Macrons executed upon and paid for my assassination. Yes, you read that correctly. More specifically, that the green light was given to a small team in National Gendarmerie Intervention Group. I'm told there is one Israeli that is in this assassination squad and the plans were formalized. Again, this person provided concrete proof that they were all placed within the French government apparatus. Further to this point, the person claims that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Legion 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement. Journalist Xavier Poussard's life is also at risk. This is deadly serious. The head of the state of France apparently wants us both dead and has authorized professional units to carry this out. I ask that every person retweet and share this. I do not know who in the American government can be trusted since this source claims our leaders are aware that I have more specific information which is definitely verifiable should they care to reach out to me. To the brave official in France who did this because they were so moved by the evil of Charlie Kirk's public execution to risk their own life, may God bless you truly. Let all be revealed. Okay, so initial reactions to this. First of all, this person says that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Legion 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement. So what we have here is an Israeli assassin. We have somebody training with the French Legion. We have Egyptian planes. And we have all of this to try and take out a few podcasters in America and a journalist who I think lives in Italy but is French, Xavier Poussard. First thing that jumps out at me is that it seems like a lot to carry out a hit. You guys ever seen I think it was the North Korean hit where they literally paid some chick to do a prank. They said, we're going to do this prank. We're going to pay you to do it. All you need to do is you're just going to put this tissue in this guy's face. Turns out it was like Kim Jong-un's uncle or something like that. And that there was cyanide or something on the tissue. And she runs up to him in the airport, puts it on his face, goes, ha, ha, ha. She runs away and it kills the guy. Do you need the French Foreign Legion? Do you need Israeli assassins? Do you need Egyptian planes and all these things to carry out something like this? Not necessarily. Or could you just sort of find where Candace Owens lives? It wouldn't be that difficult, I can't imagine, for an intelligence agency. And, you know, cut the brakes on her car or something. I don't know. Surely there would be an easier way to do it. I'm just trying to get in the head of a foreign head of state. Would you need to go through the Legion? And would you need to get Egyptian planes? And would you need to do all of this? It seems like a lot. It seems like the kind of undertaking that you would expect if they were trying to take out some sort of highly protected military general or something like that, not a podcaster. So that's the first thing that jumps out at me. And then she did say something else. There will be no official response from the Elysee Palace because what I've shared is true and I have evidence to support my claim. I even have names. They are likely trying to figure out where the leak came from. We are talking about the murder of citizens for speech. She also said, I am told that the payments for my assassinations are running through the Club de Sang, the Club de Sang in France. This means there is a paper trail and I encourage the patriots of France to do what you can to uncover it. I'm autistic and I'm sorry about this. I would again like to stress that there was a French female assassin, but also a male Israeli assassin that was selected to off me. These are joint state operations. So first of all, that's another hole in the story there. Why would you get a female to do it? You know? Did you guys see what I'm saying? I'm going to read the chat here for a little while. I'm just going to get my vibe from the chat. Like, we don't know, but we know. I'm going to get my vibe from the chat here. What do you guys think about this? I'm just trying to think about it. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a foreign government, a very powerful foreign government. And if I did want to execute something like this, how I would go about it. That's what I'm trying to think. What would I actually do if I were in their shoes? I mean, the Mossad tend to do this pretty well over the years. They will get people to infiltrate these governments, and then they will execute them in a way where it's, you know, quiet and they don't make a huge amount of noise about it. That's what I'd probably do. Do some sort of like a low key thing. Oh, you know, you could spike someone's drink. There are all sorts of substances that you get them to ingest that would cause heart failure. But maybe they wanted to do something loud and out there. Like it is a very confusing scenario for me if I'm trying to think about it from their perspective. Valhalla TV, this guy over here has been covering this stuff quite closely. He did a video on this. So let's see what he had to say. I think he had a perspective about this.
And if you haven't been following Candace Owens' recent stuff, it's getting crazy out there because she just put out a post the last couple of days claiming that there is a credible and bought and paid for assassination plot out on her life by essentially the French government. And now a lot of people right out the gate said, oh, this is just Candace being Candace. She's being bombastic. She's being over the top. However, when I read this post, immediate striking things jumped out to me, given my background and my career, mainly the French units involved. Very, very interesting stuff that maybe make this more credible than everybody's realizing. Okay. So I know a lot of people don't know how all these, you know, high level tier 1 military units and all this stuff works, but I'm your guy for that. I'm going to walk you through it and talk a little bit about where.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, the French Foreign Legion is like a really sort of hardcore, high level army corps that's attached to France. And I don't know if this is just sort of mythical or if it's just folklore, but apparently people who are on the run for international crimes and all sorts of crazy psycho people can go up and join the French Foreign Legion and get away with their crime. Is that wrong, or have I just heard that wrong? Can someone maybe fact check me on that? That if you're on the run for some sort of a crime, you can just go and join up at the French Foreign Legion?
This threat is potentially coming from. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Helps the channel. Let's jump into it and see how potentially credible this assassination plot really is. All right, so first thing we got to do, of course, look at the actual post that Candace.
Apparently that is true. That's pretty wild.
Put out, and I'm going to break the whole thing down in detail following that. All right, here we go. All right, Candace says, urgent. 2 days ago, I was contacted by a high-ranking employee of the French government. After determining this person's position and proximity to the French couple, obviously Brigitte and Emmanuel Macron, I have deemed the information they gave to be credible enough to share publicly in the event that something happens. In short, this person claims that the Macrons have executed upon and paid for my assassination. Oh, yes, you read that correctly. More specifically, that the green light was given to a small team in the National Gendarmerie Intervention Group. That's going to be very important. That'll be the first thing we cover. I am told there is one Israeli that is on the assassination squad and plans were formalized. And this is going to be important, and I'll explain how this is possible here in a minute as well. Again, this person provided concrete proof that they are well placed within the French government apparatus. Further to this point, this person claims that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Legion, and this is important, she left out a very important thing here, the French Foreign Legion, 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement. We're going to deep dive that too. This is the most interesting part of the entire post right here, that most people have no idea the relevance to the French Foreign Legion and how this could all tie into a potential assassination attempt on her life. Okay. She goes on to say, journalist Javier Pissarrod's life is also at risk. This is deadly serious. The head of state of France apparently wants both of us dead and has authorized professional units to carry this out. I ask that every person retweet and share this. I do not know who in the American government can be trusted, since the source claims our leaders are aware. That's a massively bold claim. But I have more specific information which is definitively verifiable, should they care to reach out to me. To the brave official in France who did this because they were so moved by the evil of Charlie's public execution to risk their own life, may God bless you truly. Let all be revealed. So obviously these are massive claims by Candace. The fact that a foreign nation's president has planned and approved an assassination plot on her life. Not only that, but our leaders, I'm assuming she means the Trump administration, is also aware of this and has greenlit this. Pretty insane. Sounds almost too unrealistic to be true until you look at what are the incentives. And you don't know about Candace and her coverage of Brigitte Macron. It starts to get a little bit interesting when it comes to that. Also, her coverage of the Charlie Kirk case, her criticisms of Israel, all these different things. The incentives are unfortunately there from a lot of different angles. That doesn't necessarily mean it's credible. However, these units that she talks about are the first thing we need to break down because it's very, very interesting. All right, so first thing we're going to look at, which she talks about, which is the National Gendarmerie Intervention Group, which she says is the group that's going to carry out the assassination attempt on her life. Now, that might sound like some sort of private contractor, Wagner group type of thing, but it's not. This is actually just France's tier 1 domestic counterterrorism unit. Or you could think of it kind of like a Delta force that they use as a domestic police force, okay? So what do they specialize in? Right up front, domestic counterterrorism. Most of you guys actually know who this unit is. Historically, very, very famous unit. They were the ones who took down the 1988 plane hijack in Marseilles. So we're going to take a look at that here in a second. Hostage rescue, protection of government officials, high-level stuff like that domestically. So a lot of you will recognize this immediately because it's super famous, and this is when the French GIGN took down the terrorists who had hijacked this plane in France.
Actual video footage shows the co-pilot, Jean-Paul Bauderier, falling onto the hard concrete. Yet he still manages to stagger away to safety. It gives the
That's an ankle breaker. Let's just look again how Buddy fell out of the plane here.
You will recognize terrorists who had hijacked
Bauderier falling. Actual video footage shows the co-pilot, Jean-Paul Bauderier, for. It gives the snipers the chance they've been waiting for. The French news footage captures amazing scenes of the battle. A GIGN man is blasted out of the plane by gunshots.
So the point with this is extremely high level, highly trained counterterrorism unit, right? And they have expertise in things like breaching, sniping, all the different things that you would want if you needed to take someone out that needed to be taken out, you could say. Now, this is where I stop and go, does it make sense that this would be the unit chosen by the Macrons, hypothetically, if they were to have some assassination plot on Candace Owens' life to come to America to take her out? You would much more expect something that we're going to get into with the French Foreign Legion here in a second, but a CIA Mossad-esque type of unit to be doing this. All right, so the French Foreign Legion, and this is where the story gets extremely, extremely interesting and very, very compelling, because if you don't know anything about the French Foreign Legion and how this whole thing works, okay, the French Foreign Legion actually takes people from all over the world, and a lot of these people have very serious criminal backgrounds, on the run from the law, different things like that. They get brought in and they get turned into special forces, French legionnaires, French Foreign Legion legionnaires, right? And who's a great...
Interesting, yeah, that's what I'd heard. I thought it was a folklore, but I mean, Zach and a few others in the comments before were saying that that's totally true. That's pretty badass. Like, there's got to be a movie about that, about the French Foreign Legion and all of these crazy criminals on the run all around the world going and becoming special forces. That's pretty wild. And you can imagine if that is the MO of the French Foreign Legion, how many crazy assassinations and special ops they've done all around all the shit that you'd need a crazy, like, you know, in Game of Thrones, the Hound, all the stuff that you'd want to get the Hound to do. Damn. But I mean, like I was saying before, though, it doesn't necessarily sound like such an apparatus would be needed to take out a podcaster. Surely they would want to do it in a way where it's like, oh, you know, accidental, you know, sudden death or something. I don't know why you'd want to create this whole big thing where you assassinate them in public and then everyone's going to look into it. Like, doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm no assassin, but when I'm thinking about it from that perspective, I don't know.
Example of this, of a guy we know Taylor Kavanaugh, who we're actually going to have on the show later this week, who was a former Navy SEAL and actually ended up, after some trouble in life, in the French Foreign Legion. We're going to have him come on and deep dive all of the connections to all this for us later this week. But my point with that is you have people like former Navy SEALs, former operatives of different countries that come in and become part of the French Foreign Legion. And I'm going to explain why that's very compelling here as it relates to an assassination attempt on Charlie Kirk or Candace Owens' life. So what the French Foreign Legion is really famous for is reinventing identities. And what I mean by that is you can potentially take some high-level operative from a foreign country that's got legal issues, bring them into the French Foreign Legion and reinvent their identity, and they can continue on later in life with a clean slate. Back to what Candace said here, okay? She said this person claims that Charlie Kirk's assassin trained with the French Foreign Legion's 13th Brigade with multi-state involvement.
Well, this would imply that the person obviously knows who Charlie Kirk's assassin is. So just if we were to grant this for a second and say maybe, and like the information that Candace Owens has been given here is completely true, which putting out something like this should want to hope it's true, then somebody who is right at the very top, like apparently within proximity of the First Lady of France and the President of France, knows who killed Charlie Kirk. And then there'd be obviously a background on that person, and then there'd be motive. So hypothetically, if this were true, if we were to grant it, then she's cracked the case of who actually killed Charlie Kirk.
That becomes very, very interesting because, yes, if you are going to want to hire or use someone to carry out an high-level assassination attempt on somebody like Charlie Kirk's life, the French Foreign Legion's not a bad place to look. You have some extremely high-level, highly trained operatives that could be from anywhere in the world, including, maybe places like our greatest ally that have reinvented their identity that, again, some of which with very questionable morals to begin with. This is where you would definitely look to hire this type of assassin. Now, interesting thing here. Candace says that the assassin trained with the 13th Brigade. Here's where I go, does that really make sense? Maybe, but the 13th Brigade is actually a mechanized infantry brigade. So what that means is they're highly focused on, vehicle-based combat and things like that. I would have expected this to be someone that came from the 2nd REP, which is the 2nd Foreign Parachute Regiment. And the reason why I would say that is because that's where their snipers are typically trained in the French Foreign Legion. And if you were going to choose someone to carry out a sniper-esque assassination attempt, typically you'd want to pull somebody from there. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't cross-training and different things like that, or that they couldn't go to a sniper school. That's all possible as well. Now, why is this so interesting to talk about when it relates to the Charlie Kirk assassination or Candace and things like that? That's because if you're France and you're the French government and you really did want to pull something like this off, this is the perfect unit to pull from, because you're pulling potentially people who aren't French, right? They're part of the French Foreign Legion, but they might be German, they might be from the United States, they might be Israeli, right? There's a lot of plausible deniability back towards the French government if the person gets caught and it turns out they're Egyptian or, Canadian or from Beirut or whatever. That's exactly what you want through a tradecraft assassination attempt. You want zero tieback, especially through nation to nation. It's extremely important for things like this. Right? That's why I don't think the GIGN, which Candace talks about being the ones after her, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me at all. However, the French Foreign Legion being involved all of a sudden raises some pretty serious eyebrows.
I mean, it's such a big claim to say that somebody is trying to kill you and it's from the French government and you have a source in proximity to the French government and they know who killed Charlie Kirk and is also trying to apparently kill you and another guy. It's such a big claim. Let's read through a few of the comments here. I didn't really get this one. I read this one before. What Candace just revealed is a full-scale 9/11 emergency for her personal safety. This is a full-blown assassination threat, and anyone with a beating heart should understand she needs maximum protection and prayers immediately. Here's the life-altering, deadly pattern everyone must see. On September the 10th, 2024, in the New Jersey District Court case number 225, Chaim Braverman's violent threat to kill Candace and her family, an official time-stamped warning preserved in federal filings. And this was in 2024. Then exactly 1 year later, Charlie was assassinated. Same exact date, 1 year apart. Doesn't really mean anything, but yeah. And now Candace is disclosing credible intelligence that a professional operation involving alleged foreign trained units and multi-state coordination has been greenlit to take her out. They will do anything to silence her, etc., etc. Anyone, any institution, any lever of power, Candace's safety and her family's safety must now be a national level priority, because silence after this point isn't neutrality, it's complicity. Pray for Candace and her family. And there's something here about, on September 24, user on the social media platform operating under the handle something, later determined to be Braverman, posted a video of himself on the social media platform referencing an individual by the name something. This person was a political commentator, Candace, who had publicly discussed prominent, now deceased rabbi who led a branch of Orthodox Judaism. Okay. Death threats aren't uncommon in this field of work. I got a few today, which I was reading through, which were funny. But, you know, she did get a lot of traction. Like, it's not beyond the realm of possible. Like, you know, political assassinations do take place, and they are planned. And we do see these sorts of things happen. If you are getting millions and millions and millions of views, and it does, you know, interfere with the interests of very powerful people, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that this could be something that's plausible.